are very fortunate today to have our speaker, Tyson Wrensch, co-author of the book Until Someone Gets Hurt. And he's going to share the cautionary tales of coming face to face with sociopathic team in San Francisco area, con men, murderers, and he lives to tell the tales. So with that, I am going to turn the microphone over. And Tyson, I don't know that we have the remote speaker, so if you want the mic, it's going to be up here. But all right, thank you.
All right, and I can actually talk for this story. I can tell for 3 hours, so I'm going to set a timer to keep myself in line. What, 45 minutes?
No, actually, we're starting a little early. We've got close to an hour.
All right, well, I'll set the 45 minutes so I keep myself on track.
All right, do you want to use the
Yeah, I'll use the mic here again. So we'll do this. So yes, exactly.
It's an entertainment night, so you have to stay close to it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an old mic.
Girl set up. Alright, so you should all have the now. Does everybody have that? Stream passed out, and we've got it up on the screen there too. And I had so happy Halloween, friend left or murderer, right? So and it sounds a little bit hokey, right? But the fact is, I'm just this average guy that was raised in Cupertino, went to Santa Clara University, and somehow now I'm involved in 3 murder cases. And I'm not even a cop. Like I'm just a normal dude. No, I'm not the defendant. Yes. What I'll do is I'm gonna tell you about this story, and I want to make it clear I'm not here to sell a book. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here basically to tell you what happened to me, and then to over the course of the last 15 years, what I've learned, and the idea to pass that information on to you so that you don't have to learn it the hard way like I did, and then that you recognize this, but also that you share this. So keep this presentation, because this is a big problem right now, and you'll see as we go along how it is a growing problem, and we know about it. But the story starts back in 2007. I was I'd just gotten a fantastic severance package from Intel after being there for 10 years. I was living in Germany at the time, moved back to the US, decided to take a month off, went to South America, and 3 weeks into my trip, and this is pre-iPhone, you had to go to an internet cafe to do something. I went online and all my bank accounts were empty. Wow. So I was like, what is, and then I looked and my credit cards had been charged, but not my credit cards in my wallet, the ones that I had left at home, but and not just the ones that I left at home, the ones I had hidden in a sock, in my sock drawer. So, right? So I said, so I went to I was in Rio de Janeiro, and I went to the airport, and I told the United desk, I said, look, I have no money. I got to get home. I've been robbed. But, what do I do? And she said, no problem, we'll get you home. So I got home. I got to Denver, and I called my realtor, and I said, pick me up. And by the way, I should set, I was in Vegas at the time, so this is my house in Vegas. Called my realtor, and I said, you got to pick me up and bring your gun. Something isn't right. And this has never, I'm not that's not my world, but we get to the house, we go inside, and someone has moved into my house. There's somebody else's clothes in my closet. There's pizza boxes. There was a nice pile of cocaine on the dining room table. I'm like, what is going on? So as I start going through the house, I recognize the luggage. And the luggage is that of my best friend of 5 years. And as I go through open the luggage, I see all of the withdrawal slips from my bank account. So I call him up on the landline, so he sees it's the landline and is sort of a hello, and he's like, "Are you home?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "You have some explaining to do." He said, "You know what? I'm at a business lunch. I will call you right back." Never heard from him again. So as I start going through all the stuff they left in my house, I start calling business cards and start figuring things out, I realized that he is not who he said he was. In fact, he was part of a 3-man con team who wreaked havoc on the West Coast, mainly the Bay Area, for almost a decade, bringing in tens of millions of dollars with no law enforcement action at all. Everything. So in fact, in my case, the cops wouldn't even take a report, because the bank gave me my money back, and they didn't steal anything from my house. They left things. So I'm not a victim. The bank's the victim. And it was frustrating. So, and it devolves into so much more. I've never been betrayed. I got an email. There was a website called MySpace before Facebook, and you have your top 10 friends, and he was my #1 friend, and then I went on MySpace, and all of a sudden he wasn't my friend anymore, but there was an email that said, "I see you guys aren't friends anymore, did he rip you off too?" And I was like, holy. So, what is going on? And the crazy stories continue, so I start finding victim after victim. And I thought, after my 3rd detective that I've, trying to get something done, he said to me, "Tyson," he goes, this is a financial crime, it's a white-collar crime. We don't have the manpower to go after it. It's insured. We only have the time and energy to go after where people get hurt. So until someone gets hurt, these guys are going to continue to get away with it." Wow. Right. And unfortunately, it's still that way. I'm working on another case. A friend of mine, I just got a call. I'll get back to this story, but this just happened in June. I get a call that a friend of mine's body was found he's an executive at a slot machine company. This isn't even in the news yet, but he was found in the mountains in Northern California. And I happen to be one of the few people that know that he had a side girl. And so I immediately call the cops and say, "Hey, look, I know some stuff." His employees know my story, because he was also one of my clients from work. And so they start calling me with information, because they're like, I don't know what to do, but I know you would know what to do. And would you believe it or not, the cops wouldn't listen. Because his body was found in California, but the crimes are happening in Reno, both jurisdictions are kicking me back and forth. So I had to call the DA who helped me in this case to get them to do something. But it's like the average person wouldn't be able to do that. And this is the kind of crap that we have to deal with. So this is also why I'm telling you all this, so you don't ever fall into the situation that you get in the first place. But in this story, I chased these guys for a couple years. I was always behind them, victim after victim. Ended up chasing them out of San Francisco. They went to Sacramento. I would go there, had posters. I was literally a thorn in their side. And then I find out a guy in Marin County lost $300,000 worth of jewelry. Because they befriended him. One of them befriended him, and then the other one happened to befriend him too, but knew where the jewelry was, because of course he showed con man #1, so con man #2 knew where to go get it. Wow. So I called him, told him my story briefly. He then proceeded to tell me, I said, where are they? Because I've been chasing them. He said, well, I don't know, but all I know is that a friend of his named Cliff in Palm Springs has been missing. And he's been going down there looking for him. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's BS. So I had a couple of friends that were working on this, and we call, we start looking, and we find out in Palm Springs, a man named Cliff Lambert went missing Christmas of 2008. Now this is February 2009, 2 years after everything. And in the news comments right down below, somebody said, the last person I saw him with was a well-dressed Indian male with a British accent. And that is one of the other con men. Now that gentleman was a man named Kushal Narula, who came to the US on a student visa as the Prince of Nepal. I kid you not, the New College of San Francisco believed it, gave him a full scholarship,
Wow.
got him a student visa, paid for his flight over, paid for his housing, and of course he never attended. But the other agreement was that the royal family was going to make a $1 million donation to the school. So he never attended, yet he seemed to get really good grades. The $1 million never showed up, but the school had spent the money in the budget. And after 27 years, the New College of San Francisco went out of business in midterm, shut the doors, lost its accreditation, and all the students were screwed. And that's just one of the cons. I mean, I could go on for hours. But when I saw that the description matched the last person who was seen with, I called Palm Springs Police Department, and they said, I think you need to come down. So I took all the crap that they had left in my house, threw it in the trunk, made the 3.5 hour drive from Vegas to Palm Springs, and showed up the next day at the police department where I brought the boxes, and I was escorted into that white room with the cameras in the corner where they put the suspects. Oh shit. So I'm realizing, it dawns on me that when the house of cards begins to fall, all the cockroaches spread and start pointing at each other. And I'm thinking, oh my God, and sure as shit, the good cop, bad cop routine starts. And, but I was prepared, unknowingly, because I brought everything, but I had all of the, paperwork I had, in working with Wells Fargo. I had all of the fraud paperwork. So I had everything that sort of showed that I was one of the good guys. But I had named all of them. Unbeknownst to me, the missing man's house had sold. And the house had sold to Kushal Narula. And so, and the next day I'm calling, dropping that name, so of course they're freaking out. But I've explained everything and kind of told them the story that I've told you, and now I get the good cop routine. And we're all friends, and they're going through, and I said, look, I know CSI is just a show, but there's tons of DNA in these boxes. Have at it. They're yours to keep. And they called me a week later, and they thanked me for coming in. And they said, we have arrested everybody. And it turns out that when they went up to San Francisco to arrest Kushal, because he happened to be in court on that jewelry theft, because they actually finally did something, and his lawyer in that jewelry theft was a man named David Replogle, who was con man number 3, who also happened to be the thumbprint on the power of attorney that they used to sell the house. So he got screwed too. It was great. And then they eventually got Danny. They said, you know, we can't find your friend Danny. I hate saying that, but anyway, friend Danny. They couldn't find Danny, the guy who moved into my house. And I said, oh, he's in Mexico, if he knows you're after him. And they said, no, we see he's in Sacramento. I said, oh, well, you know, when I chased him there, he's at this address. And they called me back 2 days later, and they said, thank you, we got him. So, I love revenge. Anyway, they're all arrested. A week later, they call me back. The DA investigator calls me back, and he says, hey, we want to update you. We want to thank you again for coming in, but we also want to let you know that we've updated the charges. Now this will be a homicide. Whoa! And we also want to let you know that you were very, very smart to come home early, because you were intended victim number 1. Because you and this victim have a lot in common. Because I was just moved back from Germany, so my neighbors didn't know me. My neighbors didn't, and his neighbors didn't know him. It's the ritzy neighborhood of Palm Springs, where they all have high shrubbery and you're all secluded and nobody knows anybody. We owned our homes outright, so there was no mortgage to deal with. Cash in the bank. In his case, he had no relatives. In my case, I had been overseas for a couple of years, so my mom and dad they'd hear from me maybe once a month. So if they didn't hear from me for a while, it wouldn't have raised any alarms. So really, I was the perfect mark. And so was this guy. But they, again, had befriended him as much. It turns out that they had, or Danny had befriended him. He was 74 years old. He didn't know much about computers, so Danny helped him with his computer. Danny knew all of his passwords. So for 3 months, Danny was answering his emails. He was alive. And he was telling everybody to leave him alone. He was in Mexico. I was just getting away from everybody. He helped him with his home alarm. So how did the murder go down? He was able to call the alarm company with all the codes he needed and disable the backdoor alarm sensor. Then when Kushal impersonated a lawyer who said, hey, you have an inheritance coming to you. I need to come to your house and get you to sign the paperwork. He came to the house, unlocked the back door when they was getting a tour of the house, and then the 2 hitmen they hired came in the back door, grabbed some knives from the butcher block in the kitchen, made some noise in the kitchen, and when Cliff went into the kitchen to see what was going on, they literally stabbed him in his own kitchen. And then they rolled up the body in his bed sheets, stuffed him in the trunk of his car, and buried the body. The body was never found. And so now we're looking at a no-body homicide conviction, and which is very, very difficult to prove because you have a thing. On top of that, Danny and Kushal decided to go pro per, which means they were acting as their own lawyer. And you would think, what a bunch of idiots, but they're con men. And these guys conned the state of California and the judge into giving them each $1 million to help them in their defense. And it was so crazy, I have to read it. We got a quote from Kamala Harris for this book that said, the breathtaking scope, complexity, and theatrics of this scam and these con men rivals any Hollywood movie. And that's why the story I'm telling you just got sold to HBO for a series. So it's also going to be a podcast, and it's 12. Well, it was going to be an 8-episode podcast, but there's more to the story, so it's now 12. So we got a murder conviction after 3.5 years. They bought brand new MacBook Pros. They got Starbucks in court every day. They sent people to Mexico to look for the guy that they knew they killed, but we still never found the body. So anyway, get a conviction. 2 years ago, I get a call from NBC in LA, the news, And they said, hey, can you come on tonight to talk about the update? I said, what update? And they said, oh, you haven't heard. I said, heard what? He said, all the murders got a retrial. I said, are you kidding me? and they said, he said, no, and you can't say that when you come on tonight. And yes, exactly. I kind of have a putty mouth. And so the turns out that they used those MacBook Pros with the lids down because the judge, again, the judge was in his 70s, he was filling in, he'd retired but came back, and he didn't understand technology. And he didn't know that even though those lids were down, that the laptops were still on and recording. And so they illegally recorded the judge saying some not so nice things about these guys, because these guys were absolute trash. Thank you. And and even the jury, like afterwards, the jury was like, oh, they shouldn't be in jail, they should be under the jail. So these guys are horrible. Anyway, so they got the retrials, and a year ago, on the first day of the first retrial, in the trial readiness conference, where the DA hands all of the, here's what we're going to skewer you with, to the defendant, the LA Crime Lab called. We found the body. So just is like the victim reached out from the grave with his middle finger and said, I don't think so. And so that was big news, and that's when HBO called, and actually MGM and Bravo also wanted it, but it was a fun fight, good place to be. So then so we thought, okay, nothing more could happen, and then a month ago, so we had, so the lawyer for Plogle had his retrial, found guilty. If anybody was going to be found not guilty, he was the one, because he wasn't anywhere near the murder at the time, but he did have his thumbprint on the, he impersonated the dead man to sell the house, so he's just as guilty, but if anybody could have gotten off, it was him. Shaw was up next. September, it was supposed to be in court September 8th, but on September 6th, a 61-year-old, his 61-year-old cellmate, who was in jail for his third strike for raping a child, decided he was done with him and just strangled him and killed him. So bye-bye, Prince. So that's the latest update. And so, Mike, you're the first to hear that in my talk. Because this story is never ending. I mean, we're talking about a 2008 murder, and here we are in 2022, and it's still going.
Still going on.
Still going on.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's the cons in this are kind of, we've done a couple of shows on the ID channel. If you watch the ID channel, there's a show that's still rerunning called A Stranger in My Home. If you're interested, it's season 3, episode 5, 6. And if you come out after me, and I'll write it down for you. But
Send it to me and I'll.
I can send you. Yeah, I'll send you out the list of shows to watch as well. So in all that, I want to talk about the type of con men that are out there, con women. I said, which is in general, we say con artists, right? So we have, and there've always been 2. There's now a 3rd, which I want to bring to your attention, which we'll talk about at the end. We have what we call confidence cons and relationship cons. Well, where does the word con come from, right? Con actually is short for confidence. And it came from, started from a guy in New York, was it the 1800s, who said to a friend, he said, do you have confidence in me to let me borrow your watch for a day? And because it's our nature to not want to say no. It's our nature to not want to be mean or the bad guy. And we need to get away from that, right? We can never tell. There's no Pinocchio nose. You don't really know when people are lying. So con men, similar to salesmen, and I've been in sales my whole life, so there's kind of I'm probably well suited for this. And if, I don't know, is anybody in sales or real estate? Anybody realtors? So okay, don't get offended when I.
Well, don't worry.
But as a realtor, right? They're like we'll talk about it because realtors are not con men, but they do a lot of the things that con men do for the sale, just like salespeople do with their clients, right?
They send you to classes to learn.
Yep, you want to dine. It's a term I use the term real friends and deal friends, right? So always remember that when you're shopping, when you're buying a car, right? Remember when you're at the bank and with your financial advisor, right? Real friends, deal friends. Okay, so in the confidence con space, there's sort of a list of flags to look for. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody's a con man, but I want you to look for the flags, and that's what's really important. So, first flag you'll see is fast talkers, right? They're hot to trot. They just talk. You don't get much in. Kushal was one of those fast talkers. He would talk. He knew everything, and you really couldn't get anything in. So you okay? Well, whatever you say. They like to blend in. Maybe there's somebody here who's retired and a con man. I don't know. but they'll blend into the group. They dress for success. You'll often see they'll have, if it's if they're going for big money, they will be in the nice suit, or they'll dress if it's a golf group, they'll have the latest brand polo and golf clothes or golf shoes, and they are also super friendly at first, right? We've all experienced it, right? Where we're especially like as I use car salesman. Yeah, come check out this, then there'll be your friends that call you, come in, we got it, you do the deal, and then something goes wrong with the car, and then they'll be like, oh, you need to call service, right? That's
for sure.
Yeah, but con men are the same way, right? It's like you're doing like a scam investment, right? They're your buddies, they get your $50,000 check, and now they don't return your calls, right? That's the type of thing to look for. So they make a lot of money sound like nothing. So in other words, they say, oh yeah, I made $2 million last month on this deal. Or, oh no, we just had a $50,000 vacation. Or, oh yeah, no, we just took the jet. It's only $30,000 to go to LA. That's a lot of money, right? So when people start talking like that, another flag. Mentioning, especially here we are in Silicon Valley, the home of a lot of the Fortune 500 companies and home of a lot of well-known executives, right? So when they start dropping big tech names, I worked at Intel a lot. I worked closely with Pat Gelsinger, who's now the CEO. So I start dropping that name, right? That should be a flag, you can even jumping over to number 11, dropping, billionaire friends names, right? Oh yeah, I used to work with Mark Andreessen at Netscape, and we hang out every now and then. No, you don't. Billionaires only hang out with billionaires. That's basically what it comes down to. Also, when, especially again with investments, because that's where a lot of the confidence cons come in. Calculations for earning quick bucks. When they say hey, here's if you give me 100,000 now, in 2 weeks we will double it to 200. I'm going to take half that. We're going to put it in this. That's going to have a 6 times return in a month. And you're going to have 600,000 there. You're going to take half of that, and then the next thing you know, in 6 months you're going to have $3 million. And you're sitting there going, oh my God, right? And so they exploit that greed, right? And we all have it. I have it. We all do. You know, we all know $3 million in 6 months. Hell yeah! Who doesn't?
Objection to that statement. Why your wife won't have any money, Richard?
But on top of that, the sense of urgency, right? All salespeople do it. We all do it. This price is only good today, right? Or you can only get in on this investment by the end of the day or the end of the week. And then we close the slots. Then maybe you can get it in round 2, but prices are going to be higher, right? We've been in job interviews where we've gotten job offers before where they say, here's the offer, but let us know by today. No, if they really wanted you to work there, they would say, what, do you have any questions? We really want to hire you. Let us, call us if you have any questions. Let us know by the end of the week if you have any questions. But, we really want to put, they don't tell you end of the day or nothing. Then they don't really want you. Also, they're not able to back up their claims. My friend Danny's claim was that his money came from his parents. His dad had the patent on the core technology behind laser hair removal. You can't really look that up, right? And he could never back it up. But I wish I could have heard my own speech back then. But he couldn't back it up. And turns out his mom was a receptionist at a laser hair removal clinic. So he knew just enough to be dangerous. But you couldn't back it up. Pitching the high-end lifestyle, another one, right? Imagine you do this one, you can have that house down in San Diego that you always wanted on the beach, right? Or imagine that vacation that you've always wanted to take to Paris, right? Let's do it on a private jet, right? Those high-end lifestyles, where, again, exploiting that greed, the social compliance is what we call it, but it's in the extreme cases, we see it like in Vegas. We would see it with people who would dress like valets. And so you pull up, you hand your key to the valet, and want to buy a car, right? But the way that we mostly deal with it here is in those phishing attempts by email, right? Here's the email from Chase Bank that says, there's a problem with your account, we need you to change your password, but it's not really a Chase email, right? You click the link, you punch in your email and password, and now you've given it to somebody in Russia who's now draining your account, right? And that's a social compliance con. We would actually, and another thing in Vegas, we have a couple of hacker conventions every year, and one of the things that was, every time those would come in, they would batten down the employee entrances because people would just walk in and it's just a matter of looking like you belong. And we've kind of all done it, and I've snuck backstage at concerts where you just look like you belong. That's social compliance. But all they would do is then, with their camera, they'd take a picture of like the copy machines, and the copy machines have an IP address on them so that IT can figure out where it goes. Well, they get that IP address and boom, they're in your network, right? So these are the type of things, but the most important one is those emails. So again, I can't stress enough, don't click the links. If you get an email from Wells Fargo or something that says, we need to change your email, whatever, go directly to the website, don't click the link.
Call your card.
Or call, right? But don't click links. The herd principle. We all know that the story of like the 3 shells with the ball, and the guy on the street and the sidewalk doing the thing, and there's people all around him, and they're throwing money, and people are making money, and you go, oh, I'm in. I'll put $100 I can find that ball, and everybody else was winning. Now I can't, right? Con men do the same thing, just in a different way of saying like, oh, your 3 neighbors on your street just invested, or I got 3 other people from Lockheed just invested. That's the type of stuff. Or I've got I've got 5 people from SIRS just invested. Those type of things are the herd mentality con that they get you on. And you also will see things like where they let you wet your beak. In other words, you may invest $1,000 and then 2 weeks later, you get $2,000 back. Oh, this is a real deal. All right, I'll give you 50 grand. Bye. And the last one in the confidence con, and there are more, but again, you go on and on. But it's called what we call the spy movie, right? So where they tell you a secret, right? They tell you something that nobody else is supposed to know, right? And now you're part of this exciting, I'm like in a James Bond movie, right? But okay, I'll give you the money, but nobody's supposed to know. We'll keep this on the DL. Again, that's where they get you. So these are again the red flags to look for in confidence con artists. So the next one is the one where, again, we get to relationships, and that would be, in fact, so the relationship one is, I think, the worst. I think because there's nothing worse than betrayal or having your heart broken. In my case, he was my best friend, and I think that's my case from that friendship relationship. Being burned and betrayed was what lit the fire to have me just taken down. And I don't know, has anybody seen The Tinder Swindler on Netflix? So that's put that on your list. I'll add that. The Tinder Swindler on Netflix, fantastic 2 hours movie documentary. Don't look it up. Don't look it up because the end, if you look it up, you'll spoil the ending. But amazing documentary. So there are horrible people out there in the world online and in person that are out there looking for marks. And they are looking for marks with the first thing they look for is somebody with low self-esteem. That's your first trigger, right? So a lot of us can feel if we're alone, right? Like we're not attractive, or nobody loves us, or we don't have friends. So when somebody shows us attention, we maybe ignore all of the voices in our head that say, oh, this is probably a bad idea. Another thing to look for is when the relationship moves quickly, right? All this, you met a month ago and now you're in a relationship. Yeah, you're either best friends or you're in love, right? But you still gotta know a lot about them, right? They don't tell you a lot. You don't know much about their past. They have a common name, Bill Smith, Mary Smith. Something that that if you Googled it, there's 10,000 people with that same name. So really hard for you to look up. If you've never been to their home, another thing to be aware of. They're always available or they're never available. Another flag, right? So they either can't come to, especially these online relationships, where you meet somebody online and a lot of talking goes on, and they just can never come see you, right? But they'll always talk to you. Or it's something, or that they decide they're going to come visit you, but something always comes up. Oh, we have a problem at work, I can't make it, I cancel. So all of their stories end up not adding up. So trust your gut. And that's one big thing to remember is always trust your gut, because your gut's always right. If you feel like this person is not on the up and up, go with your gut. It is okay to say no. There are now, 8 billion people in this world? So you find another friend. You can't verify their stories. Again, I'll jump back to the Prince of Nepal. Oh my God, I look back and you cannot find anything on the royal family of Nepal because they were like disbanded years ago, right? So if I had been smart enough to look that up, I could have probably saved myself a lot of trouble. They love to impress you with flash. You'll notice that my presentation is quite boring, so that's on purpose. I don't have a lot of pictures and animation, but I'm not here to impress you with flash. I'm here to warn you. But there's they drive the nice car, or they show you pictures of their lakefront home and the hot tub that sits out over the balcony and all that stuff. Another one to look for are what's called isolation tactics. In my situation, after he did me dirty, I went to call all of our mutual friends to tell them, hey, this guy's a con man. And nobody called me back. I finally got through to one person who said, hey, look, here's the story. I heard from Danny that the reason you were in South America was that you were running from the DEA. Because, and at the time I was 29, I had a 7-figure home in San Francisco. I worked at home, and I was always out and about. So everybody saw me. It made perfect sense that I was one of San Francisco's biggest drug dealers. And so if they answered my phone, if they answered my call, they would be considered suspects. So a genius move on his part, but on my part, when I went to Wells Fargo to identify all the photos of him stealing my money, I stole 3 of them while they weren't looking, and I copied them and sent them to everybody, and then suddenly I was in the right, and he was busted. But I had to
Evidence.
Yeah, I had evidence, but it was I had to steal from the bank. Another thing, so anyway, so they isolated me, this Vegas executive, same thing. This side girl here isolated him from everybody, and so when we went to the memorial, what was that? 2 months ago? Yeah. 2 months ago. Everybody that showed that knew him for 30+ years from working was like, who's she? Because all the pictures in the funeral were of him and her. And he's like, he's married to somebody else. So, I mean, this was crazy. And it was hilarious because suspect number 2 was also there and gave me a really big hug from behind where he was doing this and checking me for a wire. It's kind of fun. Another thing, subtle inquiries into your finances, right? So could be the question of like, did you max out your Social Security withdrawals or whatever, where you have taken out $17,000 a year, which means you made over $170,000 that year. How do you own your house outright? Right? You just have a mortgage on the house, right? These are the things that are that you need to look for. Just a subtle tick into how much money do you have? Asking for a loan. Now, there are two tips here. But basically, if they can ask you for a big loan where you're like, no way, and then they'll come back for a smaller one, and then you say yes because you feel bad about the first one. Or you have what's called a one-way relationship where they're only with you when you're buying them stuff. So keep that in mind. And the most dangerous of all, the quick marriage. You've met them, and a month, 2 months later, they want to marry you, and because honestly, you are more valuable to them dead than alive. And that is unfortunately a very, very honest truth. And later this month or early in November, I'll be doing my 4th interview with Dateline. So we are very keenly aware of those quickie marriages turning to murders. So who are the victims? The most common age group for these cons are in the 60 to 69 age group, followed by the 30 to 39 group. So I tell you this because I want, some of you probably have children in that age range, and I want you to be able to tell them this as well, because these are important little tidbits to know to look for. And the victims are generally not poor decision makers. In fact, they're successful and smart people. Poor people make horrible victims and cons because they don't have money. And also, what's kind of ironic is that 10 to 20% of people get conned more than once. They fall for it again, and they often admit that they're like, yeah, I kind of thought it was going to be a con again, but I did it anyway. They can't figure out the psychology behind it, but people do it. And what's the scary part of this, and I just found this statistic out, but in 2021, last year, consumers reported. Now, most people don't report when they get caught, so these are just the reported. They reported more than 5.8 billion in losses, and that is up 70% from 2020. So the cons are on fire, and so look out.
Another COVID problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We need a vaccine. We need a con vaccine or something. But that's my hurry up button. All right. So the imposter scams that were like the relationship scams and all that. Those were the most popular. But the investment scams were the most costly for people. So heads up on that. And now for the new one. And I have to admit, I am not an expert in this. So I gave you a QR code to scan with your phone. If you don't know how to do that, I will show you. But we should all know how to do it because we've all been to restaurants. Use other menus. But there's something called predatory guardianship. And there's a Netflix movie about this called I Care a Lot. And as I was updating this, there's a documentary on Netflix called Dirty Money, which there's 2 seasons, and there's one called Guardians Inc. And I went to go make a second QR code to guide you there, and it wasn't there. So I Googled, I'm like, what happened to Guardians Inc.? And I'll be damned if those Guardians didn't file a big old lawsuit, and Netflix had to take it down because it's currently in litigation. And what they basically do is there's these people who are called guardians, and they get a judge and a nursing home that are on the take, and they basically find somebody who's generally single and retired, wealthy. And they get the judge to say, yep, that person is no longer competent to be on their own. And they come in and they scoop you out of your house. They put you into this nursing home where you are basically imprisoned. And then they sell your home because they're your guardians. So they own everything. They'll do an estate sale. They take everything, and then they use that money to pay the exorbitant fees for that nursing home until you're out of money. And it's legal. So the link here is a website that tells you all the things you need to do to avoid, to set up your finances in a way that the guardians can't get it. So again, I'm not the expert in that, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. Read this website and do what it says. So, and we all know about these guardianship cases. Britney Spears was probably the most prolific person, and that wasn't really, I wouldn't call that necessarily. I mean, it's pretty close because I think her dad probably scooped up a lot of her cash in that, but we'll find out. We'll find out in a few years, I'm sure. But that's the important thing. So hopefully I haven't giving you the Halloween fright of October. But I really hope that you take away from this just be aware that they're out there and keep yourself, your money, and your family and safe and stay alive. Watch out for bad guys. I forgot. There's one more. I forgot. There's and just to point out that this is still happening. There is it literally popped up on my phone. October 10th. So what's that? 3 days ago? 3 days ago. I'm just going to read this. A man claiming to be a Russian astronaut in space allegedly scammed a Japanese woman into paying for his return trip to Earth. I'm not kidding. This is in the news. Vowing to marry her once he landed. Now, as I go through this story, think of all of those little bullets that I said and figure out how many, they're all in here. Check. The man found a 65-year-old unnamed victim on Instagram in June. On his profile, he uploaded random photos of space and said he worked at the International Space Station where astronauts have limited access to cell service. Their relationship quickly escalated online. The app was called Line. It's a Japanese messaging app. He repeatedly said he loved her and proposed marriage. He sent her messages like, I want to start my life in Japan, and saying this 1,000 times won't be enough, but I'll keep saying it, I love you. But to actually tie the knot, he said, he needed money to return to Earth. There were landing fees to pay once in Japan, and the cost of a rocket to actually fly to fly him to Japan. Believing this man would be her future fiance, the woman paid him about $30,000 US dollar, 4.4 million yen, in 5 installments from August 19th to September 5th of this year. But when his demands continued, the woman grew suspicious of his intent and reported him to the police, who are investigating the case as a romance scam. So the 6th time she grew suspicious? So, I mean, you can't make this up. It continues. Like, it's out there. So please be careful. And that's, trick or treat.
People make them go to a fish website.
Yeah.
And so most real QR codes have their HTTP address below it.
Yeah. No.
But
This one doesn't.
if
Yeah,
it
so
doesn't,
when you scan it, I sell a book. No, I'm just kidding.
when you scan these kind of things, you go to a website, you get a lot of information.
Yeah, in fact, I'll do it right now so you can see. But if you just do that, hold it up, then tap it, and it will take you to. It's called newretirement.com, and it actually talks about the I Care a Lot trailer, and it talks about the predatory guardianship. What is it? 9 tips for creating durable powers of attorney to protect yourself from predatory guardianship.
Just like getting a link.
Yep. So it just makes things easier than typing a long URL. Yes.
I'm sorry, but I gotta ask.
Yes, of course.
Have you, over all these years, have you learned enough not to oppose it for Trump?
Well, I wanted to, mixed crowd. I wanted to avoid the politicians, but yes, politicians are also right there with the con men world. I mean, they are the ultimate con artists. I mean, everybody. Yeah, I mean,
CEOs are very,
yeah, I mean, it's all whatever gets the stock price up, whatever gets your vote, whatever.
I was raised in Bakersfield. I learned all of this in high school.
Yep. So, I mean, again, going to, the confidence con, right? You can apply a lot of these to many aspects of life, and salespeople. So it's It's a good little chart to keep on your fridge.
You didn't answer my question,
Oh.
though, that I understand.
We stay out of that service.
It's a good indication of who you're dealing with.
Yes.
Who's the podcast through?
So it hasn't released yet. In fact, I just heard the first episode last week. And we're in a funny situation where normally what happens is the Dateline episode airs, and then a podcast follows, and then it grows in popularity. So then one of the streaming platforms or network picks it up, and we've kind of done the opposite, where we're filming Dateline, we've recorded and are editing the podcast, and the story got so crazy that we didn't have to do any of that crap, and HBO picked it up. So because of that, some of the podcast hosts are like, well, it's going to be on HBO already. We're like, so what? As a podcast, it's better. So we don't know what HBO is going to do. And again, it's Hollywood, so it could all dry up. But somebody buys Warner Brothers and shuts down HBO. Who knows? So it's Hollywood. Yes.
Few questions. What bank was so generous to give you back all your money? Because on Channel 7, banks aren't too friendly about giving you.
Yeah. So I was with Wells Fargo, but they were generous enough to put the money back provisionally, based on an investigation. But it was really frustrating because I was working with the Rob investigation team for the Western United States, and I would go in to their office after I identified all the photos. I went in and I'd say, "So did you get them?" And he's like, "Well, I called him and told him he needed to return the money." and I was like, "What?" And so I go back a week later and I'm like, "So did you get him?" And he said to me, "Tyson, he's like, you got your money back. Why do you care?" And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? And they're like, the cops are like, look, it's insured. I'm like, yeah, it's insured by the FDIC. The F is me, federal. That's my tax money. So I'm still getting screwed. So, this is why I'm so pissed off when I tell this story.
Mindset.
Yeah. The mindset is like, it's not our money.
A couple more questions. What about that cocaine you had that you turned in?
Well, I don't do cocaine, I just like the smell of it. sorry, Dad.
How does the defense get $1 million a piece out?
Yeah, no, when the cops came, then I did have the cops come out, but they didn't take a report, so they cleaned everything up, yeah.
How does the defense get paid $1 million a piece for their trial from the government?
Yeah, I mean, that's the judge basically gave them the $1 million budget, and they spent it on all kinds of things, yeah. Yeah, and I actually told the DA to tell the judge to get rid of on those laptops, to take out the Wi-Fi card, the microphone, and the speakers. And the judge goes, "There's no Wi-Fi in jail." And I was like,
Yeah, right.
"Now there is."
Yeah.
Because he didn't know about hotspots.
Yeah.
The CSI team that was on trial, I mean, absolute boondoggle. I mean, this is just a town. Palm Springs is not a high-tech town, and these were high-tech criminals. And I'm surprised we got the guilty verdict. Thankfully, we had a district attorney, her name is Lisa DiMaria, and she was a rock star. But her health, she dropped to 90 pounds during this case. These guys, actually, this is kind of an interesting story, I'm probably going over, but they turned around and sued her. She actually became a defendant during this trial. So, my friend Danny, his mom, who's also, I think, on the gravy train, she went online and got her reverendship, and then she called the jail. So when you're in jail, there are 2 calls that are not recorded: calls with you and your lawyer, and calls with you and your spiritual guide. So when his reverend mom called the jail, the call was recorded, and the disc was transferred to the DA. So therefore, it's violated his civil rights that the DA has listened to the call between him and his spiritual guide. And therefore they sued her for $260 million personally. She had to get a lawyer and became a defendant while she was prosecuting them for murder. Now, the case went to trial, and then the judge basically said, Danny, if you were a real lawyer, you would know that there's a code that you punch in to stop the recording. So ignorance is not a defense, and therefore this case is dismissed. But the fact that she had to stress out because now they're suing her for her just doing her low-paid government DA job, and she's looking at basically losing everything because it's just garbage. These guys were garbage. So yeah. So
Oh, I have a question. So Danny was your friend for 5 years. Was he, in the interim, was he getting confidence from your friends or?
So
how was your relationship in 5 years?
So there were times where he would say to me like, "Oh, stop talking to this guy. He ripped me off." Right? And I was actually trying to get Danny to move from San Francisco to Vegas because so many people were ripping him off. And like, you need a fresh start, right? You need to get away from all these horrible people. But in fact, he was the one ripping them off, right? So he was isolating me from them, and so I wasn't returning their calls when they were trying to warn me. Right, so but then I would also, when this went down, I had a couple of friends that were smarter than me that said, Danny tried telling me that, he had a friend who, had the prince, the prince's family was being held captive in Nepal, and they needed money for bail, but they would double your payout if you help them. And she goes, Tyson, that's she said to Danny, that's the, what do they call it, the Nigerian prince scam, but it's just, they changed it to Nepal, right? She goes, Danny, that's a scam, don't fall for that, right? And then she until after, right? And she's like, I have something to tell you. And so I'm like, oh, you're smarter than me. So, that's, so they tried assembly lining my friends as well. I did, but the FBI will listen, but they never tell you anything. I've been to the FBI more times than you know, and I've never gotten a return call. Yep. Exactly.
In the end, did you ever get your money back?
I did. I took a bit of a loss because I had money in Europe. And I transferred my euros over, but the euro then spiked like 6 months later. If I had just left it there, I'd have had a lot more money because the euro went way up. But it is what it is. You can't predict.
You not go visit him on the weekends?
No, but you know what? Every month I get a little royalty check for that book, and I have a nice little dinner while he eats bologna sandwiches with Bubba. Yeah. All right.
Unfortunately, we're old folks and we need our afternoon naps here. All of that reminds me so much of an email I just got. A good friend of mine gets the email, and you may have experienced this too. Hi, don't know if you can help me or not. I need a little help, let me know. The answer back, sure, if I can, I will. Next one comes, it's I'm away and can't get to my accounts right now.